excited to welcome everyone. I'm excited we have people near and far listening to this, and we're just glad that everybody's here today. I am Heidi. I am the host of this webinar. I'm also a presenter and a podcaster, and I'm just really happy to be with you. So, are you ready? Are you ready to learn? Are you ready to succeed? Are you ready to grow? Yay. Okay. Well, then I want to start by introducing Corey Anderson. He is our guest today, and we are so happy he is taking time to be with us. So, Corey, can you just tell us a couple of little things about you really quick?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you for inviting me, Heidi.
Yay.
I'm excited to share some ideas with you. My name's Corey Anderson, and I work in education. I've worked in education for the last 20 years, roughly. I started out by just walking into the local elementary school and volunteer teaching the Spanish-speaking students because I speak Spanish and I kind of wanted to keep it up. I was in college at the time. Um, but as I did that, the principal's like, oh, we would love to just come and do this as much as you possibly can. So it became my part-time job during college. But I loved working with kids so much that, I thought I got to change my course here. So I went into education. I graduated and started teaching. I taught sixth grade for a number of years, as well as did some other teaching opportunities at high school and the middle school as well. And then ultimately I became an administrator. I worked in secondary schools and elementary schools. And the last 8 years of my career, I worked in 2 elementary schools as principal. And then most recently, I joined the WhyTry program, which specializes in social emotional learning. And that brings us to today. So here I
Yeah,
am.
this is why we're happy to talk to you today because we're wondering, like everyone, we're just really concerned about how the pandemic has affected social and emotional health. And so I just think that you're probably the perfect person to talk to about what we can do about that and how it's affected everyone.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely very relevant today. Um, Before the pandemic, it was becoming more and more apparent that we had a big need, an obvious need for social emotional learning. And then with the pandemic, it's been highlighted even more, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a greater focus has been placed on it.
Right, for sure. And I think it's what we need to do different too. I think there's some different things like you said, we were already going on that path of social and emotional, but now it's needed more than ever,
For sure.
right?
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
more relevant today than ever because COVID's really affected that. So what do we do? What can educators do to help with the social and emotional health?
Well, I think it's important to start off by just addressing the question, what is SEL,
Yes.
right? When you hear social emotional, well, what does that mean exactly? It's a little abstract. And depending on who you talk to, you could get varying opinions, or not opinions is the wrong word. You could get varying understanding of what social emotional learning is actually talking about. If you don't mind, Heidi, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah.
I have a few slides that might help in terms of defining what social emotional learning means. So here we go. Social emotional learning, uh, defined by CASEL, which is an organization that specializes in social emotional learning across the country. CASEL defines social emotional learning and says, it's an integral part of education and human development. It is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Not exactly your elevator answer, like you've got 5 seconds to tell someone what it means, but this is kind of all encompassing for sure.
So pretty much means everything.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like it is a little overbearing. And so for an educator, if we're talking to a teacher about social emotional learning and you put this up, they might be a little overwhelmed, like, wow, that is a lot. That is a lot. Like, who's
Yeah.
responsible for this? And in reality, everybody's responsible for it. And if you were talking to a counselor, social worker, or psychologist in this school, they would have a deeper understanding of this just because that's what they've specialized in. But up until today, not today, but until more recent
Yeah. Yeah.
years, there was kind of just this idea that social emotional learning is something that the counselors will take care of with your most at-risk students that have displayed major issues and have needs. We'll just have them, take care of it. But now
Right.
we understand more and more that every single student can benefit from social emotional learning. But in order to reach every single student, everybody needs to have a hand in the implementation of social emotional learning. So this is kind of the complex answer of what social emotional learning is. There's actually something that we at WhyTry that I like to do to help people better understand what we are referring to with social emotional learning. And it comes through asking educators and others two questions. And these two questions go a long way to framing what it is we are talking about when addressing social emotional learning. The first question is, what are the greatest challenges motivating the students you serve? And when I pose that question to educators, and I've asked this question to thousands of educators at this point, I get varying answers, obviously, but I get a core group of answers that definitely come to mind. And so I would even pose this to you, Heidi. If you were to put yourself in the shoes of an educator, or even you with your own experience working with youth in varying capacities, and even being a parent, what are your greatest challenges motivating the youth you work with?
Yeah, I was thinking that when you said that, and I thought it seems like it's definitely their social and emotional side. Like, you don't know what they're dealing with at home, you don't know what's going on in their lives. And I think that would be the hardest part, to have a student there and you just don't know everything that's happening in their world and what they're carrying and what they're dealing with and what they're hurting. I just think that would be huge. That's a huge challenge for a lot of
It is.
teachers.
Yeah. And those challenges come, the most common answers I get are a lot of things that have to do with things happening in the home,
Yeah,
whether it is family problems, poverty, homelessness, abuse, neglect, trauma, the loss of a loved one. And then you throw in the pandemic,
yeah,
right? Then you have kids that were at risk that has lost their sense of routine. In
right.
fact, the only predictable thing in a lot of their lives was going to school every day and having a
Right.
very predictable routine. Like
Yeah.
whatever was happening at home, they could always count on going to school and having math first period and English second period and seeing this teacher. And there was this one teacher they had a really good relationship that they'd see on a daily basis. And suddenly all of that was gone. And that in and of itself is a source of trauma. But regardless, all of these challenges, and then you get into the social issues of maybe bullying or not having friends, or dealing with emotions that they don't know how to control. There's so many things out there that you could label as challenges that stand in the way of motivating students to try in school, right?
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
there's a long list. There is a long list. And then the next question we ask, after we kind of surface that list of challenges that are standing in the way of motivating the students we work with, we then ask the question, so what assets or skills will those students need to be successful in the future? What assets or skills will those students need to be successful in the student's future? And, along those lines, obviously, they're going to need academic skills, but specifically relating back to that first question, they are going to need to learn communication skills and coping skills and those soft skills in terms of being able to uh, just take care of themselves and learn those types of skills, as well as things like being able to identify their own emotions
Yeah.
and learn how to communicate those emotions and deal with those emotions. Um, they have a lot of different things they're going to need to be equipped with to enter adulthood.
Yeah, for sure. So
And
what
so
do
the
we
nice
do? Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
sorry.
So the nice thing about those two questions is that's what social emotional learning is all about. It's teaching students how to deal with those challenges, how to face those challenges and come out the other side, not necessarily solve those challenges. Because a lot of those challenges, they
They're
are
just
out
going to
of
be there.
their,
Yeah.
yeah, they're going to be there. They're out
Right.
of their hands. And regardless if those challenges go away, you and I both know that there will be future challenges that come along. So
Absolutely.
um, it's teaching them how to deal with challenges that come up with in their life, and then try to give them those skills I just talked about, those different sets of skills. So that's what social emotional learning means,
Okay.
and that's what it's all about.
Awesome. That sounds great. So how can educators get more training in this? What do they
So
do?
how can they do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause like, I don't know if it's a natural, like it is natural. It's natural at home, maybe with your own kids, but I think in that classroom setting or school setting, I think it might be really hard to be able to relate and have experiences with all these kids.
Yeah, for sure. Back in the day, back when I was going to school decades ago, social emotional learning was something that I kind of referred earlier, that it was kind of left up to the counselor or the psychologist to work with, the most
Yeah.
extreme student. And
Right.
then for everybody else, it was just kind of, it was almost like uh, learning by osmosis, I guess, like the kid would soak it in from the adults, through their teacher. They would just naturally develop good characteristics that would carry them through life.
Yeah.
There was some character ed pieces where perhaps the school would focus on being kind one month and then being honest the next month,
Mhm.
right? And that was kind
Yeah.
of a character ed that was a social emotional learning back in the day. But now we definitely are much more intentional and strategic about social emotional learning, and we need to be. What tools, what things are there out there that we can use? So here's a couple of ideas, and this is something that is definitely has gained a lot of momentum in the last 10 years, and specifically in the last few years it's really gained momentum, where it's gone from being something on the side to being more of a core focus. And so any educator can look at the following things to gain support. First of all, school-wide PBIS. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Intervention System. So any school out there is probably going to have some type of structured, this is how we are going to create positive culture in our school. So any teacher or educator should be able to fall back on that. And if they don't have that in place, then they should start asking that question: what are we doing collectively as a school to create a positive culture? Then the next one is an organizational MTSS. MTSS stands for multi-tiered system of support. And this is usually something that's adopted at a higher level, at like a district level, but even at a school level. But this is basically saying, okay, let's look at all of the needs that could possibly be out there for any of our stakeholders, any of our students. How are we going to address those needs, whether they're academic, whether they're behavioral, whether they're kids who have been through trauma, whether they're kids who are dealing with homelessness, whether they are kids who are dealing with other social issues. What are we providing for them? And that's what MTSS is all about. And so normally within that system, there will be identified resources that specific organization or district can tap into, right?
Good.
And then I talk about school programs and resources. What I'm referring to there is that more and more schools are tapping into programs like the one I work for, WhyTry, that specializes in social emotional learning. And there's many out there. There's not just WhyTry. There is, some of the older ones that are well known are 7 Habits from Stephen Covey. I think they call it Leader in Me, to Rachel's Challenge that comes in and tries to build school culture. Second Step is a popular one in elementary schools. And then in WhyTry, we try to specialize across the spectrum there. And we go in and try to train educators on developing genuine, authentic experiences with students that center around social emotional learning. But you definitely have those school programs and resources. And then there are kind of different styles of how to respond to students who are in need and in crisis, and those best practices that are really important in 2021 are trauma informed practice and restorative justice. So getting trained in those two ideas are also a critical step in addressing social emotional learning needs. So
Very, very critical. Yeah. That would be very important for educators to know about right now. Yeah.
The last bullet there on that slide is what we call the 3 R's of social emotional learning. Um, that's a WhyTry. This is a WhyTry term that we have developed over the last 2 decades, and it is piggybacking off the idea that there's the 3 R's of academics: reading, writing, and arithmetic, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of like the core pieces of academics. So our core pieces of social emotional learning are the following: relationship, relevance, and resilience.
Mm.
And I'll come back to relationship. Relevance is speaking to the idea that when we're talking about social emotional learning, it will be a lot better if you engage students in ways that they want to learn. It will make it more relevant to them. And that's the approach that we take in WhyTry. We use music, we use videos, we use activities, we use all those we use a lot of visual metaphors. We use all of those different styles because kids are going to gravitate towards that a lot more than just kind of a sit and preach to me sort of
Yep.
deal.
Yep.
So that's what relevance is referring to.
Okay.
Resilience is referring to the idea that that is the overall skill that we are trying to develop in all of our students, is the ability to bounce back no matter what comes their way.
Mm.
And so our end goal is resilience. That first one, relationship, the reason I am waiting to talk about that one last is that I would imagine everything I've talked about is a little abstract here. And it requires anybody who's listening, it requires them going and doing a little bit of research on their organization, what their school, what resources their school has at their disposal. But the one that they could get started with immediately right now is relationship. And all of it hinges on relationship. It does not matter what program you bring in. It doesn't matter what ideas are adopted in an organization. It
Right.
all hinges on the relationship that educators make with the students that they're working with. And it's what anybody who's listening to this can go and start doing right now.
Oh, I love that. Is there a tip that you would say, a first thing they could do, or if they see somebody that really needs a good dose of this, like what would be something they could do easy to
Great
start
question.
with?
Yeah. So relationship, you may think, I've heard that before. Relationship, have a good relationship with your students. But I would frame it this way: the type of relationship we are referring to when we talk about build the right relationship with your students for social emotional learning is this: every one of your students has to know that you care about them regardless of their success, regardless of their failures, and regardless of their behaviors. It's really easy to develop a positive relationship with your all-star students that come in and do exactly what you want them to do, right? Like
Right.
that's easy. The harder one are those students that are really displaying aggressive behaviors or fighting back in class or acting out, who don't necessarily get good grades or excel academically.
Right.
Those ones, it's a little harder, right? Do they really know you care about them? Kids are put in a position at a very, very early age to start comparing themselves to others all around them. And so they compare
Yeah.
themselves to the other kids in their class that are constantly passing tests, that
Yeah.
are doing everything they're asked to do behaviorally. And whether educators realize it or not, their body language and the small things they say, these kids, they capture it. They are watching. They are sitting there watching adults on stage, basically, and they see small little things of body language that then they internalize and think, I don't think my teacher likes me as much as they like the student next to me. And
Right.
so it's really important that we keep that in the back of our mind. We are only going to be able to help these at-risk students, these students that need social emotional learning help. We are only going to be able to help them if they believe that they care about us, regardless of our success, failure, or behavior.
Ooh, that's
So
great. That's amazing.
yeah,
Well,
you've got to keep that in the
yeah,
back.
that would be great. Our sponsor, Ready to Teach, works with like substitutes and temporary teachers and stuff. So, what could they that seems like even harder. Like it's hard
Yeah.
enough for the teachers to develop that relationship, but then you got to substitute.
Yeah.
So any
Well,
tips on that?
thank you to help me teach the sponsor of this for inviting me out. What a great organization trying to create that smooth transition, because we rely on substitute teachers and temporary teachers a lot, and they come into a tough
Yeah.
situation. And when a teacher leaves the classroom and students act out, it's not necessarily that the students are waiting for a sub to act out. It's that there's a change in routine and it causes a certain amount of discord in the student, and that leads to behaviors. So it is natural for that change in routine to cause students to act out. And so then a substitute comes into a situation. What can they do? Well, here's something that can happen. One thing that the school can do is the administration and leadership in the school can really push and ask for teachers to have prepared an SEL plan for their substitutes coming in. So that's something that the school can do on their side, to better prepare those substitutes as they come in. But something that the substitutes, in my opinion, should do coming in is what I already talked about, and that is relationship. So no matter what the teacher has planned for them, and I know there's teachers out there, if they're watching this, or administrators that are cringing and are going to text me afterwards and be like, Corey, don't say that, but I'm still going to say it. So sorry. I apologize. But no matter what plan the teacher has put in place, a substitute should probably spend the first part of the day making sure they develop a good relationship with the kids, right? Helping them learn about them, make some connections, and develop that relationship by doing a quick fun activity at the start of the day, finding different ways to connect with the students at the start of the day, standing outside that classroom and greeting kids as they walk in, and creating a friendly, warm environment. All of those things are important to do to establish a relationship from the get-go. It will just simply make the day go much better if you are developing that relationship with students at the start. So that would be one thing I would advise substitutes and temporary teachers to do from the outset.
Perfect. That is a great tip. I love that. I was just imagining it. I'm like, oh, imagine if the substitute is out there and doing those things that you're saying, greeting the kids and doing some kind of get to know you things when they come in. I thought, oh, that really could change the whole dynamic of the day. So
It
that's a
would.
great tip.
Yeah, you can really leverage your relationship in a way, right? So
Yeah.
if I walk into a classroom and if I start the day with high energy, with fun, I make connections with the students and I get them to buy into me, then I
Yeah.
can say, do you know what? I want to keep, I want to do more of this at the end of the day if we have time. But I'm only going to be able to do that. You know, we do have things that we need to get through that your teacher has asked us to do.
Yeah.
And so let's focus on that at the end of the day. We'll come back to this awesome relationship that we've developed at the
Mm,
start of the day, sort of thing, right? So if you create an awesome relationship that the kids are buying into at the start, you can leverage that throughout the day.
love that. Love it. That's great.
What do you think?
Perfect.
Anything else, Heidi? I think I've covered what I'd like to cover today.
You did such an amazing job. You answered all my questions. And so I appreciate that. Yeah, this was really helpful. And I really think it did help us address kind of this latest problem with the social and emotional health. I think you've got some great ideas and a great program here with WhyTry. And so I'm just grateful for your time today and appreciate you coming to talk to us and explain more about WhyTry and how helpful it really would be to have those relationships and help schools. So thank
Thanks,
you.
Heidi.
I
Thanks for inviting
appreciate
me.
it so much. All right. And we will have this recording available on the Ready to Teach website as soon as possible. And just want to thank everybody for joining in with us today. I'm going to leave with a little video here at the end. So I'm going to share that, but you're welcome to log off as you need to and just make it a great day, everybody. And thank you for participating. And thank you, Corey, with WhyTry.
We know that running a school is one of the most difficult jobs on the planet. Whether it's onboarding a sub, gathering paperwork from a new one, conducting background checks, training, and so much more. The checklists are endless, and keeping tabs on everything can be absolutely exhausting. That's why we created Ready2Teach, so schools and teachers alike could have a simple software solution to guide them through the platform and paperwork they need with the click of a button. Our sleek and easy-to-navigate web and mobile apps give clients the ability to recruit and onboard subs while also allowing teachers to enter vacation and request time off, no matter where they are in the world. With our job management platform, educators can request subs, manage pay rates, lesson plans, and more. It's clear that our service gives professionals the ability to focus on what really matters, the kids. So visit our website to learn more and schedule a demo today. Let us help prepare you for tomorrow. Ready2Teach. Absence management from start to finish has now been simplified.